Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Lead with Giants TV. My name is Tal Schnell. I'm your host this afternoon. And joining me is Joanie Connell with us from San Diego. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Glad to have you. And also joining us is Liston Sally. Welcome this afternoon.
Thanks, Tal. Glad to be here.
Great. Well, we've got a great show ahead of us. Always trying to add value to leaders, and that's why we have Joanie with us. And let me do a little quick introduction about Joanie. And she's an organizational consultant and leadership coach who specializes in maximizing leadership potential. She works with companies to attract, develop, and retain top talent. She works with individuals to improve their success and happiness in their career. She's also the author of a book called Flying Without a Helicopter: How to Prepare Young People for Work and Life. So we're going to have a great discussion because many managers and leaders are looking for, we're a little bit overwhelmed, overstretched, and we want to make the best and add value to people and really balance our life. But we're getting more to do in our plate, so we're going to try to talk about that. Joanie, my first question is, which is a challenge. I try to speak. I know also in my organization and other leaders in Dallas is number one challenge is how do I balance my time? How do I balance my life with everything that's being thrown my direction?
Well, Tal, I think that's a struggle for all of us. And the answer is it all comes down to priorities. And for executives and leaders especially, you have some choice in this, and you are also a role model for others. So what you do impacts what other people are doing. When it comes down to the priorities, it's a matter of what's important to you. What are your values? Are your values about being healthy or being rich, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because I work with a number of leaders, and when it all comes down to it, if you're not healthy, you're not going to be rich, you're not going to be
Right.
happy, you're not going to have a good relationship with your family. So balance is actually more important than people realize.
And, from what you're just saying is you're getting into the really kind of the iceberg here because people wanting to do a good job, they want to lead their team, they want to lead their family, and but they really kind of get caught. They're really stressed, but they want to do the right thing. One of the challenges that I think that all of us face is, like you said, is really having priorities, having some sort of a system in place to keep our priorities. What's important? What should I do first? And what should take? Emails, those kind of things. What is your suggestion for someone who is really a leader who's been giving more responsibilities now, and now they're just overstretched and overwhelmed with everything that's coming their direction, but they've done a really good job in their previous role that somebody wants to actually reward them. So.
Right. Oh, that's an excellent question. And I think one of the things that happens when people move up in an organization is that they're used to doing things themselves. That's what's gotten them to where they are. And as you move up, you have to learn to delegate to others and have other people do a lot of the work so that you can focus on the strategy and the external factors and leading the organization. Sometimes that's hard for people to give up, the control factor. So it's a matter of realizing that if you want to stay sane and
Right.
also do the best work for your company, you need to get a team of people who are effective.
Great. Well, I know Liz has got her experience also working with Liz Stinselli Advisors there with work-life balance and other things going on. So let me open up for her question.
So I want to take this a step further. We
Sure.
need to balance our lives inside of our jobs, but there are many of us we have full-time day jobs, and then we're also building our own things on the side. And so how do you have any suggestions for finding balance between keeping our organizations happy, being able to commit time and resources to our own businesses that we're working on, and then still having time for family and friends and that type of thing?
Well, you actually are diving into the issue of time management. It's funny because I've been teaching a class on time management for about over a year now, and it all comes down to the priorities piece. And you look at all the literature and the advice on time management, and people say it starts with the values. What is important to you? And once you figure that out, the next piece is the discipline. Staying focused on what is important and not letting other people or other things distract you and take you away from those. So if you realize right at the crux of it, okay, it's important to get some things done for my employer and it's important to get some things done for me, but when your employer asks you to do something that isn't necessarily important, yeah, that might create a conflict, but maybe you can find a creative solution to work through what meets everybody's criteria for what's important. A lot of it is about the pieces of time management that will help you prioritize and stay focused on what's important.
And that's really great advice. It's really easy to let things that aren't important distract us. So.
Yes, I'd say a second factor is the courage. I mean, that's part of the discipline, but courage is really important too, to be able to say no. And one of the things that I talk to a lot of leaders about, well, also just other employees in organizations, is how to say no. And it's not necessarily saying no. It could be saying yes, but understanding what are the consequences of doing that. So if you spend your day working on project X, then you won't have time to finish project Y. And which is more important to your employer? And let them help you decide that as well.
Joanie, talk to us about, we will actually have, for our audience, just so you know, with Lead with Giants and then just anybody who's following this interview, we'll have a blog post as a guest blog post from Joanie. One of the things, Joanie, you share that 4 steps in living a sustainable lifestyle. If you don't mind, go through those with us for our audience a little bit.
Sure, absolutely. Well, you know, I talk about this in terms of figuring out what's important. That's what we were just talking about just now. And it comes down to thinking about in your life what your values are and understanding that right at the crux. Sometimes people want things for reasons they're not really thinking about, and they may really actually value other things, other priorities. And you talk about, I mean, this is a season of wanting and or giving thanks and being grateful, and then we move into the next season of asking for stuff, right, for gifts and everything. And if we think about what we have, not necessarily what we want, we might actually be a little bit better off. But in terms of the 4 steps, we're talking about that and asking ourselves what's important, and then we're actually having the discipline to stay focused on that. Did you have any particular questions about that, Tal?
Well, I think that I know that, let me give you an example, and I would like to actually come back a little bit after this question to the values a little bit later, but because I think it's very important. I know a lot of it is the time management, discipline, and focus, and then what's important. The values are really key for many people. In terms of the lifestyle, is some people are, you know, I guess they are very focused on how they start their day, whether they are eating healthy, a healthy breakfast, or they want to get a fitness or kind of like a you know, a lifestyle that enables them to have some energy in their day. They maybe go running, they may go exercise, that kind of stuff. How important that is to the stress level, and what can not that everybody has the same lifestyle, but what are some of those things that can really help us stay focused and energized?
That's a really good question. A couple of things that I talk about that are even the bigger picture areas are taking the breaks and having that downtime. And you're also talking about putting in the energy at the beginning of your day. Well, absolutely. First of all, we've got the body that needs nourishment, but we also have the mind that needs the nourishment. And as leaders, we actually have problems with both because we run out of time and we don't take care of our bodies. But the mind we often forget about. Making decisions, leading a company, those are very taxing activities.
Hmm.
And having some time to focus and give your mind a rest is another way to energize. In addition to getting the right vitamins and having
Right.
a jog to the exercise and all that, exercising your mind or letting it take a break is really critical. We talk about having some time just to relax and be creative and let your mind wander. That's the time when creative ideas surface.
Hmm.
And I we solve problems during those times too. All of a sudden it'll bubble up. You may have noticed that in your own life. When you're not focusing on things and you're just kicking back, you might say, oh, now that's what I should have done. Or this would be a nice, easy solution for the problem. But also, taking time to ground yourself, not just thinking about nothing, but thinking about what is it you need to be focused on, and preparing yourself for the day, preparing yourself for your next meeting. Is it a meeting where I'm going to be listening and needing to hear the information? Is it a meeting where I'm going to have to take charge? And how can I best bring myself and be present during this next activity that I have to do?
So it's really important to really pause and reflect and kind of take it all in, just kind of stepping away from
Hmm.
the to-do list, the execution part of it, and just reflecting on the day, taking those little breaks in between, and just kind of taking a almost like a mental breather, if you will, throughout the
Hmm.
day, just trying to get yourself, because mentally we're not only physically exhausted, we're also mentally exhausted from everything that's coming out to our direction.
Hmm. Yeah, and that tends to lead to the burnout too. I mean, the physical pieces break down once we have a lot of stress on us, and the stress it stems from the cognitive part, right? What we're thinking about, what we're doing, what we're feeling, that we have the pressures, but that ends up showing up as physical damage to our bodies, right? We see this when it's too late. People have ulcers, they have chronic fatigue syndrome, they have heart attacks, all sorts of things come up which are real. And I've seen this with too many executives. And burnout as well. We get depression and other psychological factors as well that come up. And it's much better to think proactively about this. It's not just a matter of taking breaks during the day, but also the real breaks. And I wrote in the blog as well that it means actually turning off your electronics sometimes. That's an issue that has come up increasingly over time, that we're tied down to our phones, to our email, to all of these electronic communications, and we never actually turn it off. And if you're not powering down, or at least leaving your phone on your desk and
Right.
taking the run, then you're not actually disengaging from your work.
Right. Well, I'm kind of guilty on that as Facebook addict here, so
Yep.
I'm guilty of that. So I can relate, and sometimes I have to catch myself and saying, just like for an hour or two, just don't go on Facebook, just do something else, just
Right.
and I think that's real important. But I like to also give an opportunity for Liz to finish our first segment maybe with a question to lead us to conclusion of the segment. So go ahead, Liz.
Joni, could you quickly talk about, do you see a trend? Is the way we work changing? Are you seeing some trends out there that maybe you can share with us?
Well, there are some trends that are out there. And you look at the statistics, the question is, are we working more than we used to, right? Do we work harder than people in other countries? Well, the answer is yes, but it's not necessarily that much. So um, the quantity of hours is slowly increasing, but we're not necessarily working more hours than people in, say, Greece, for example, or in Eastern Europe, but compared to some other places we are. So the one trend of are we working longer might be yes, but not as much as we might think. But the other trend is, are we working smarter or not? When we distribute our work across all the hours of the day, it is impinging into our personal lives more than it used to. People used to work, in America at least, and then leave when they were done. And we look now that that's not happening as much. It's interesting, actually, in France, for example, they just passed a law where employers aren't allowed to email their employees after hours. Now, we probably think that is ludicrous for most of us here in the United States, saying, oh my goodness, to actually shut down when you finish work at 6 o'clock in the evening and there's no emailing after that. But for them, they realize this is a priority. We don't want people to have to feel like they have to check in at 11:30 at night to stay current on what's going on in the workplace. So that's where I think people are getting a lot more burned out, to answer your question, Liz, in terms of this constant influx of information and tension of having to respond to it.
That'd be really interesting to see that here, because I've been working for companies that you'll see emails. Not only my company, gosh, I have the chance to visit with some customers, and their day is never over, and they're working. With the exception of sleeping at night, they are working through day and night. So it does happen, and it would be interesting to see how it's going to work here if it does. Joanie, thank you so much for doing the first segment with us. We'll go ahead and close up here, and then we'll our second segment for our audience. We will tackle more of the resilience, how to be a resilient leader and a manager. So we'll talk more about that. Thank you.